Welcome back to a tragic story now. Investigation teams are currently assessing the damage to Notre-Dame Cathedral after a fire devastated the medieval cathedral in Paris, France. Firefighters fought the blaze for nearly 15 hours throughout the night, and they now say it is completely extinguished. A fireman has been badly injured, we understand. Emergency teams managed to rescue some priceless artifacts, including what is said to be the crown of thorns in which Jesus was crucified. Let's get the latest now, and we join on the line by our correspondent Ira Spitzer, who is in Paris, France. Ira, thank you very much indeed for your time. What's the latest with regards to the fire? There's reports that it has been completely extinguished. Can you confirm that?
Well, yes, we have heard about an hour ago that devastating fire at the Notre-Dame Cathedral has been completely extinguished. So that is, of course, good news. And this is a fire that started at about 6:30 p.m. local time last night, raged out of control for about 8 hours. So it was only in the middle of the night here that firefighters were able to get inside of the Notre-Dame Cathedral to make some headway in controlling that fire. However, it did, of course, continue to burn for several more hours until this morning, but now it has been completely extinguished. So the focus really has shifted to trying to assess the extent of the damage to that building. And on that front, there is, of course, bad news, but also good news. The bad news is, of course, that the cathedral's spire has been completely engulfed in flames. Most of us would have seen that video, that shocking video of the spire falling. However, much of the structure is intact. The main structure is intact, as well as the two towers, the two iconic towers there. So this could have been a lot worse. However, certainly just sort of a devastating fire and a very tragic event, although there was no loss of life, which is good news.
Yeah, we're seeing that spire coming down and really shocking, dramatic visuals coming out of Paris, France. I guess the big question is, with regards to the cause of this, there's been a lot of speculation. We do understand that the cathedral was under renovation. What are you hearing?
Well, we haven't had a confirmation yet of the cause, but there certainly has been lots of speculation that this was perhaps caused by the ongoing renovations at Notre-Dame, and this would certainly not be unprecedented. There have been other fires that in the past that have started or would have started in similar ways, and basically you have this very old building, Notre-Dame, constructed originally in the 12th century. Now that spire and much of the roof being supported by wood. So if there is some sort of work such as welding or something that would cause sparks, it certainly can happen where that goes unnoticed initially, and then perhaps the workers leave for the day or something like that, and then suddenly you have a fire on your hands. Now, that is not necessarily what happened there, but that is some of the speculation here.
It's hard to wrap your mind around when this cathedral was actually completed. It was completed back in 1345. 1345. So indeed a historic and iconic cathedral. Notre Dame meaning Our Lady, but it doesn't necessarily only affect Catholics around the world. It's a very popular tourist destination. About 13 million visitors a year visit this cathedral. Give us a sense of how much of a loss this is.
Well, certainly Notre-Dame is essentially the most popular tourist attraction in Europe, and it is not only important for visitors to the country, but it's also a national symbol of France. This is a cathedral that has survived 2 world wars, the French Revolution, hundreds and hundreds of years intact. Now, in some ways, you could say that the cathedral appears to still be intact, although there will certainly need to be major reconstruction, although that's maybe a best-case scenario. We'll see the extent of the damage over the next couple of days. But certainly, Notre-Dame, a symbol of both European and world history, and some of the tributes that have been pouring in from from other world leaders, really a testament to that. German Chancellor Angela Merkel saying her condolences to the French nation, and we've heard from many world leaders because, of course, this is just an extremely significant blow and event for not just France, but for the entire world.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't normally see a president going down to an active fire scene. We did see that Emmanuel Macron going to the scene. He pronounced on certain issues in terms of the rebuilding of this cathedral. What do you have to say?
Right. Well, Emmanuel Macron, the French president, was about to go live on television to deliver an important speech about the ongoing Yellow Vest protests when the news of the Notre-Dame fire came in. And yes, as you mentioned, he immediately headed to the site because, of course, nothing else in the country really mattered with this Notre-Dame burning. So all eyes focused on that, and Emmanuel Macron pledging to begin the work of rebuilding Notre-Dame. That was his focus. Said that would he wanted to start that as soon as possible. Now, one thing that will, of course, require is a tremendous amount of funds to rebuild a cathedral of that size. A couple of French billionaires have already pledged significant funds, upwards of $300 million to that effort. Macron saying he was prepared to start an international fundraising effort to raise yet more funds for the reconstruction of Notre-Dame. So that's really the focus, I think, of these next couple of days. Will be assessing the damage and figuring out how to possibly reconstruct what has been lost.
Some believe that the crown of thorns that Jesus had on his head was stored in the cathedral. Do we know about that in terms of the artifacts? Do we know the status in terms of this crown of thorns?
Well, that appears to be a positive story coming out of the devastating fire. That this crown of thorns, parts of which were purported to be worn by Jesus on the cross as he was being crucified. Now, supposedly, pieces of that ended up in Notre Dame, where they were stored. Of course, an extremely important and holy artifact in the Christian religion and just in world history in general. So it appears that is one artifact that has been saved. We don't know the fate of many other artifacts, but that's certainly one of the most important, if not the most important artifact. So good news there.
It's one of the most important times on the Christian calendar. Many are observing Holy Week in the lead up to Easter Sunday. This is a place where Mass would normally be held, isn't it? What's the plan now? How are Parisians and the people of France in general reacting to this, and what's the plan for Holy Week?
Right. Well, certainly just the news of the Notre Dame burning would be bad enough, but the fact that it's happening in the build-up to the most important Christian holiday just makes it even more shocking, and especially for Christians here in France who may have been planning on going to those Easter masses. They were planned for this Sunday at Notre Dame. Of course, those will not be taking place, and we saw some impromptu praying and singing last night as people tried to come to terms with what was happening right in front of their eyes. This sort of unbelievable scene of chaos and of flames engulfing this monument, this building that had been there their whole life. So for Christians here, certainly a sad occurrence. We don't know exactly what the plans are to replace those Easter services at Notre Dame, but of course, whatever happens, the fire at Notre Dame will certainly be at the front of people's minds.
Yeah, no doubt it will. You know, we were talking about Emmanuel Macron and his coming to the scene. He was on scene yesterday. He's been putting out, so to speak, political fires of his own of late. Do you think sentiment will change a bit in terms of how he's handling this current situation?
Right, that's a good question. That's an interesting question. Certainly, we've seen in other in the past where you've had terror attacks or things like that, where the leadership of a country can sort of take a different, represent something different to the people suddenly. So it's not inconceivable that Emmanuel Macron's response to the Notre-Dame fire could be something that people remember either positively or negatively, and that could shift some of the focus away from the Yellow Vest protests, which have really dominated the news coverage here in France, certainly, as well as around Europe. So it'll be interesting to see whether the Notre-Dame reconstruction effort and just dealing with this national tragedy, whether that has an impact or an element of actually bringing Parisians and French people closer together, as opposed to some of the divisions we've seen. But hard to say at this point how significant that will be.
What have you heard from the Vatican, Ira, in terms of a response from Pope Francis?
Right. Well, the Vatican, of course, has expressed sympathy with and with this tragedy, and really expressed also just the loss that has come with this fire. So the Vatican, as well as other the United Nations, other important organizations, really reacting to this tragic news out of Paris.
I appreciate your reporting. Thank you very much indeed. It is a majestic edifice and some say a great example of French Gothic architecture. I mean, completed back in 1345.
850 years of existence.
My goodness.
Quite amazing. A story on its own.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Ira Spitzer, our correspondent in France. Thank you.